Isaiah 28, order upon order, line by line, a little here, a little there. Some translations say a precept upon precept. So I was taught that this is the way that you're going to understand the word of the Lord. Order upon order, line upon line. I said, well, this is you have to put it collectively. You have to do study, and a little here, a little verse here, a little verse over there, and that's the way that I was taught that this says until about 3 years ago. I was listening to the prophet portions, and again, one a Karaite, the other one a rabbinical Orthodox teacher, and they went into the Hebrew on this, and there was one part I was missing. So it changed everything about the way that I see this verse. I'm going to share that with you. You may not like it, but I guess this is part of the teaching, Okay. Isaiah 28. Woe to the proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim. Who's he speaking to? And to the fading flower of the glorious beauty, which is at the head of the fertile valley, and those who are overcome with wine. Speaking to drunkards. Behold, Jehovah has a strong and mighty agent, as a storm of hell, a tempest of destruction, like a storm of a mighty overflowing waters. He has cast it down to the earth with his hand. So that whole phrase means, I am upset with what you're doing. Okay, the proud crown of the drunkards of Ephraim. I'm upset at you. Is trodden down underfoot, and as a fading flower of the glorious beauty, which is at the head of the fertile valley, will he, like the first ripe fig prior to its summer, which one sees, and as soon as it is in his hand, he swallows it. So the first fruit of a fig tree, or the first flowering of the first fruit that comes right before you have your first harvest, sometimes it's a little bit bitter, not really all sweet. But anyway, he swallows it, right? Okay. In that day, Jehovah will become a beautiful crown and a glorious diadem to the remnant of his people. So now he's teaching you who is the royal crown. He says, whatever you're doing, you say that you're doing it right, but that's not it. He says, I'm going to destroy you. But if you want to know what is the beautiful crown, then I'm going to show you. And a glorious diadem to the remnant of his people, a spirit of justice for him who sits in judgment, a strength to those who repel the onslaught of the gate. Now he's given us a comparison, but we don't know what he's comparing it to. We're just getting these phrases that are there. Okay, and these. Okay, so these they, and we're going to see him and I. Who is speaking? Who are they? Who are these? Who is he? Who is I? Okay, and these also reel with wine and stagger from the strong drinks. He'll tell you, the priest and the prophet reel with strong drink. He's given us the answer here. They are confused by wine. They stagger from strong drink. They reel having vision. They totter when rendering judgment. For all the tables are full of filthy vomit, and without a single clean plate. I know that verse. That verse was spoken by the prophet Malachi right before the temple was to be built, and he's speaking to the priest. Malachi says, "You are presenting defiled food upon my altar." So I'm giving you feast. I'm telling you how to do it, and yet in your table in the altar, it looks like you have vomit on there. What's happening? They're probably chewing the word of the Lord, and then creating soup or whatever, and so God doesn't like it. They're getting lambs that are lame, that are that are blind. They have a defect on them, and they're saying that's okay. It's okay. We'll cut the legs off, and this is still a good lamb. He says, so you're defiling my altar. There's not even a clean plate here because you don't even wash them. So you're not following the instructions, is what Malachi is saying. That's the same phrase that is here. To whom would he speak? Would he teach knowledge? And to whom would he interpret the message? Is this God or the priest, right? To those weaned from milk and to those taken from the breast. So there is a allegory here. If you think this is God, it's the mothers that will teach their children, that have to feed them. God doesn't do that, right? It's the mothers that will always teach them. So who's going to teach these guys? Basically, he's talking to the prophets, right? And the ones weaned from milk, that's the mothers. And then the ones that are still taking milk breast, well, that's going to be the mothers. For he says, who is he? Who is he that says? Let's assume that this is God, right? Order on order, order on order, line upon line upon line, a little here, a little there. And did he, this God of the prophets, will speak to his people through stammering lips and with a foreign tongue? He who said to them, here is a rest, and give them rest. So he's going to speak to them, but they would not listen. I swore by a note that that they would not enter my rest, is what he says in Hebrews 4, right? So this is God that is speaking. So when we look at it, we think this is God speaking, order upon. But he says, but they wouldn't listen to this. They're not going to listen to the stammering lips of the drunks, right? He's not going to listen to the people that are full of wine. Okay. It says, so the word of Jehovah to them, to the people and to the priests will be, to the prophets will be order on order, line upon line, a little here, a little there. And then he gives us a caveat here, that they may go on and stumble backwards, be broken and snared and taken captive. If we're going to be listening to the stammering lips of drunks, right, or want to understand something in a foreign tongue that we don't understand, that they may stumble backwards and be broken and snared and taken captive. So even though God is telling them, he's telling you what the preacher, the priests and the prophets are teaching, and to them it will be. Okay, therefore hear the word of the Lord. Now I'm going to tell you what I think about all this. Oh, scoffers, you who are taking me and making a mockery of the things that I have said, who rule the people who are in Jerusalem. Because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and Sheol we have made a pact. The overwhelming scourge will not reach us when we pass by. Whatever we're teaching, it's not going to affect us, right? For we have made falsehoods our refuge, and we have concealed ourselves with deception. That's a strong phrase. We want to be idiots. We don't want to understand this thing. We like it better when we don't understand. This is too confusing for us, right? Therefore, that says, Jehovah, your Elohim, behold, I am laying in Zion a stone that you can build upon, a tested stone, a costly cornerstone for the foundation. I'm going to give you a foundation firmly placed, that he who believes in it will not be disturbed. When you understand this, you'll see it. Nobody has to teach it to you. You don't have to. You can understand it because I'm telling you this. So what did God say? Instead of line upon line and precept upon precept, I will make justice the measuring line, and righteous the level. You'll know when it comes from me, because you don't have to be confused, and nobody has to interpret it for you. Then hell shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the water shall overflow the secret place. And your covenant with death shall be canceled. covenant you made with death, right? And your pact with Sheol shall not stand. When the overwhelming scourge passes through, then you become its trampling place. As often as it passes throughout, I will seize you. It will seize you, for morning upon morning it will pass throughout. Any time during the day or night, that I will be a sheer terror to understand. Now that the covenant of death is what Paul, I think what Paul was speaking in Colossians 2, right? He says, you were dead in your trespasses. So and having canceled out your certificate of death, consisting decrees that were against us. So we're teaching that the Torah is not gone. He put it on the cross. Well, Torah was not against you. It judged you, but it was not against you. It also blessed you. It wasn't against you. He's getting this from Isaiah, right? Your covenant with death shall be canceled. The bed is too short on which to stretch out, and the blanket is too small to wrap oneself in. For the Lord will rise up as the mount at Mount Perazim, and he will be stirred as the valley of Gibeon to his test, to his unusual tech, to work his work, his extraordinary work. And now do not carry on as scoffers. Repent, that's kind of what he says. Lest your fetters be made stronger. For this is Isaiah, right? I have heard from Jehovah, your Elohim, to Savuel, the Lord of hosts, a decisive destruction on all the earth. He says, give ear and hear my voice. Listen and hear my words. This is the message to Isaiah. You will speak. They have ears, but they're not going to hear. They have eyes, but they're not going to understand. Okay, so he's going to give you a parallelism so that you can understand the way that he does things and the way you don't do things. Does the farmer plow continuously to plant a seed? He plows, plants a seed, then he goes and plows again and plants a seed. No. Does he continually turn and harrow the ground? Does he not level the surface and sow deal and scatter its cumin, the seeds, and plant in rows of wheat in rows and barley in its place and rye within its area, away from the rye away from the barley? For his God instructs him and he teaches him properly. Right? This is common sense, is what he's telling you. You have to do it the right way. Otherwise, whatever you do is going to be like, it's a mess. And then you want me to fix it? For deal is not threshing with a threshing sledge, nor is the cartwheel driven over the cumin, but deal is beaten out, or the bill is not beaten out with a rod. There's no way that I harvested, and cumin with a club. Grain for bread is crushed. Yeah, indeed, he does not continue to thresh it forever, because the wheel of the cart of his horse eventually damages it, and he does not thresh it any longer. This also comes from the Lord, the Shavuot, the Jehovah of hosts, who has made his counsel wonderful and his wisdom great. Pursue love. Okay, now I gave you what Isaiah was saying. I'm going to give you almost the same context, but when it comes to speaking in tongues, that the Apostle Paul writes. And it's a counsel of common sense, right? The same way that Isaiah read it. Okay, pursue love, yet desire earnest spiritual gift, right? But especially that you may prophesy. This is the one thing that I want you to do. For one who speaks in a tongue does not speak to men, but unto God, for one understands, but in his spirit he speaks mysteries that no one understands when you speak to God. Okay, but one who prophesies speaks to men for edification and exhortation and consolation. One who speaks in a tongue edifies himself. But the one who prophesies edifies the assembly. So he's giving you a comparison, right? He's not telling you not to speak in tongues. He said, well, when you speak in tongues, it's probably better if you speak to God, because if you speak to the assembly, they're only going to understand if you prophesy. Now, I wish that you all spoke in tongues, but even more that you all would prophesy. And greater is he, one who prophesies, and greater is one who prophesies, listen to me, than one who speaks in tongues. Why? Simply because the one that prophesies will edify a bunch of men. The one that speaks in tongues is only edifying himself. He's making a comparison. He's not telling you not to do it. Okay? Unless he interprets it so that the church may receive edifying. So you're in the assembly, and that's the caveat. This is when you do it. You prophesy in the assembly and you speak in tongues before God. Right? Okay. But now, brethren, if I come to you, and he's making himself an example, if I come to you speaking in tongues, what would it profit you? Unless I speak to you in the way of revelation or knowledge or of prophecy or of teaching. I came to you speaking in Greek, in Latin, in Hebrew, and you're a church in Corinth, right? Wouldn't it be better if I spoke to you but he's speaking at the synagogue in Hebrew, right? In a synagogue in Corinth. So I don't think he's speaking in Greek. But what happened if he spoke Latin there? Interpret what he's saying. But now, brethren, if I come to you speaking in tongues, which will profit you, okay? So that also you, unless you utter by the tongue speech that is clear. And how will it be known what is spoken? For you will be speaking into the air, right? If you speak in an unknown tongue, nobody interprets it. No one will understand what you say. I do that. I do this in songs when I sing, and I sing songs that I learned in Spanish, and eventually they came from the English, So when I sing the songs, I'll sing the Spanish and then the English. And some, as soon as they hear the Spanish, I don't want to hear that. But the ones that know me will always know that I do this bilingually, right? But I know, I love to listen to songs in Hebrew, but I don't understand them all, So I listen to them, But when they have the English subtitles, I listen to them. This is what Paul is saying. This is just common sense. I'm not telling you don't do this, don't do that. I said just use your common sense in order when you are addressing the assembly. So also, unless you utter by the tongue speech that is clear, how will it be known what is speaking? For you will be speaking into the air. There are perhaps a great many kinds of tongues in the world, and no one without its own meaning. If then I do not know what the meaning of the language, I should be the one who speaks as to a barbarian. The one who will speak will be a barbarian to me. Okay, barbarian simply means the people that aren't educated, like somebody from the farm, or And so also you, since you are zealous of spiritual growth, I know that you want to do this the right way, is what Paul is saying. And I know that unless somebody teaches you, unless you practice it, some of you are going to get it wrong. But I know I'm giving you my intent, that I want you to pursue this. So seek to abound for the edification of the assembly. Therefore, let one who speaks in a tongue pray that he may interpret it. For if I pray in a tongue, my spirit prays, but my mind is unfruitful. So you yourself, you speak in a tongue, you don't know what is being said. My mind can't grasp it unless somebody prophesies it. For if I pray in a tongue, my spirit prays. What is the outcome then? So what is the conclusion? What is it that I'm trying to tell you? I shall pray with the spirit, and I shall pray with the mind also. I shall also sing with the spirit, and I shall sing with the mind also. Otherwise, if you bless with the Spirit only, how will the one who fills the place of the ungifted or the unbeliever say the Amen at your giving of thanks, since he does not know what you are saying? For if you are saying thanks well enough, or if you are giving thanks well enough, but the other man is not edified, he doesn't know, what did he say? So we say shalom. Oh, you said that to a Christian. I mean, some understand it, but what is this? What are you telling me? Shabbat shalom. For the I, thank God, I speak in tongues more than you all. Again, he's just telling you the right way of doing it. He's not chastising you. He's trying to edify you. However, in the church, I desire to speak 5 words in my mind, that I may instruct also others, rather than 10,000 words in a tongue. This is a problem. This is a tradition that we're passing down. And sometimes in the middle of a service, there's somebody speaks in tongue and somebody interprets it. I desire to speak 5 words with my mind, that I may instruct others also, rather than the 10,000 words of the tongue. So, if you have a speaking in tongues in the church, and then 20 minutes later, we are going to hear the word of the Lord. Didn't you just hear it? And somebody interpret it? So now what, you're going to replace what somebody said? It doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense in the way that we're practicing this. Let me say, I desire to speak 5 words with my mind, that I may instruct others also, rather than 10,000 words in a tongue. Brethren, do not be children in your thinking. This is common sense to you. Come on. Yet in evil be babes, but in your thinking be mature, that the law, in the law it is written, Isaiah 28. So he's going to, I quote Isaiah 28. So here we know that that he will speak. We know that the he in that verse is God. Okay, by men of strange tongues, and by the lips of strangers, I will speak to this people, and even so they will not listen to me, says the Lord. So, and this is a paraphrase, right? But the by strange men is actually by drunkards, priests and drunkards and prophets. So not strangers that we not knowing. Strange means that they are strange to me. I know them, but the things that are doing makes them strange unto me. That's what that phrase means. By strange tongues or by another language. He says, even so, they will not listen to me, says the Lord. So the tongues are for a sign, not to those that believe. So when we're given the interpretation, is this to the believers? Right? But to unbelievers. But prophecy is a sign not to the unbelievers, but to the believers. So when we're interpreting tongues in the church, don't they usually say, "Oh, my people, oh, Israel, oh, the church"? They're speaking to the to the assembly, not to the unbelievers, right? Okay, I don't know if you see this, but this is the way that I see this, right? But prophecy is a sign not to believe, not to unbelievers, but to those who believe. If therefore the whole assembly should assemble together and all speak in tongues, and ungifted men or unbelievers enter, they not say that you are mad. And this is what we always get in some of our churches. I love this when we're asked to pray, and you can pray however you want, and then you hear the tongues and you hear the English. Sometimes you hear the Spanish, but that's not to edify. That's a praise. That's a worship unto the Lord. That I don't have a problem with, and this is not what this is speaking. Because we're praising, we're worshiping unto the Lord. But when we're trying to edify that's a different story, right? But if all prophesy, right? And an unbeliever and ungifted man enters, right? He is convicted, and he is convicted by all. He is called into account by all. The secret things of his heart are disclosed. God will speak directly into to his heart. So he may even fall on his face and worship God. Isaiah said, it will go into a secret place, right? This is a direct quote from what Paul is, also teaching that is going to be there. Okay, what is the outcome then, brethren? When you assemble, each one has a psalm, has a teaching, has a revelation, has a tongue, an interpretation. Let all be tongues, let all things be done for edification. If anyone speaks in a tongue, it should be by two and at the most three. He said, and each in his turn, someone interpret. But if there is no interpreter, let him keep silent in the church and let him speak to himself or to God. And let two or three prophets speak. Let the others pass judgment. So when the prophet speaks, you can, Paul, what is it that he writes? Don't you know that you will judge the angels? Is a phrase that he uses, but it doesn't mean angels. He says you will judge the messengers. You will judge the prophet. For if you can all prophesy one by one, so that all may learn and may be exhorted, and the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets, right? For God is a God. Is not a God of confusion, but of peace. He didn't come to confuse you. You know, what did the interpreter say? And then why is the tongue, like 3 or 4 verses, phrases, and yet the English interpretation is like 3 or 4 paragraphs. He's not a God of confusion, but of peace. As in all the churches of the saints. And then he gives you the let the woman keep in silence and all that, but that's a different issue. Okay, so let the women keep silent in the church. What is this doing here in reference to speaking in tongues and everything else? Okay, so this is a problem that we have. When we read this section here, we think, and we separate it from everything else that Paul wrote to the Corinthians. It's a problem. Because we're not looking at the context that are here, and then we read this and we think it's a commandment from Paul, right? That he's actually, this is the way that the assembly should be run, and no. So let me tell you what the context is here. So the context here is that the Corinthians are a mess. Right? So you basically have 16 divisions here. Chapter 1 is about those that are with Apollos and those that were following Shaul, and they're having a discussion about this and they're disputing about this. Chapter 2 is about how to be spirit-led. Chapter 3 is about you are the temple. Some of us read you are the temple and, we don't need a temple anymore. I mean, we come up with our own doctrine because of what Paul is trying to teach it. He's teaching a metaphor. He's teaching a parallelism, right? So if you're in the temple and that's sacred and holy, then your body should also be holy. It's just a comparison, It's not I'm not going to go and and do sacrifices on your body, That's so 4 servants of the Messiah, how to be a servant. 5 sexual immorality in the church. In the church, really? And then 6, a case against his neighbor when they were trying to do lawsuits. 5 is the issues of marriage. 7 and 8, concerning food that are sacrificed to idol. They had disputes about that. And then they had disputes about him. Am I not an apostle? He says in chapter 9, and he's trying to approve his apostleship. 10, avoid the mistakes that Israel made. So this is an Old Testament, history lesson that he's teaching them. And then 11, head covering, and the Passover, head covering, the women should be covered their heads, and the men, should not cover their heads. And then the issue of Passover. What was the issue of Passover is that people were fasting the day before, and then when they would come in, they would gorge themselves, that they make up for the lost time. And then after that, the people that came in afterwards had no food, so there were disputes among them, These guys need a lot of education, a lot of common sense, right? So if you're teaching this to your church, I would teach it as a summary, but if you're picking up a chapter here and there to teach a church, might as well teach a whole book. 12 spiritual giftings, right? One Spirit, the many, many gifts, but one Spirit, and yet we separate the healing from tongues, from the gift of administration. No, I've got this one, but if you got the Spirit, you got them all according to what He will need. This is not according to what you're going to create as your ministry, and so we have the spiritual gifting, and then we have, that if you speak in tongues, but you don't have love, and then we're looking at the 14, right? Tongues, women, and the prophets. 15, Messiah died, He was buried, and then He resurrected. And then 16 is the conclusion of all that. So, okay, so if we're going to teach about the women to speak silently, we need to go look at verse 37. If anyone thinks he is a prophet, right? Then the spirit of the prophet is subject to himself, and then we get a prophet that comes up and says, well, the Spirit has just given me this for you, and then we need to also speak about the prophets, but we never say anything about the prophet. It's always the women that we want to teach. So taking it out of context is it's a mess that you create, because without women, you're not going to get children. You're probably not going to get some of the fathers. The church does not grow without women, literally and figuratively. It won't grow. It's with the women that were following Jesus, that were contributing into His upkeep. These were women with money and stuff. And so, okay. Let the women keep silent in the church, for they are not permitted to speak, but let them be subject themselves, just as the law also says. Where does the law also say? So Paul gives this information in 11, right? For a man does not originate from the woman, but the woman from the man. Genesis. For indeed man was not created for the woman's sake, but the woman for the man's sake. So he's giving you the order of creation and stuff, but right after that, every man that came out came from the woman. So there's a balance in this thing, and if you are the husband of a wife, you have to take care of her, as Christ loved the church. So she's basically in your care. She's above you. Love the Lord your God, and your neighbor as yourself. So your neighbor is your kids, is your wife, is the family, is everybody that's related to you. Okay, and if they desire to learn anything, let them ask their own husband at home. So apparently, what's happening here is in the church, after the praising, right? Everybody's speaking at the same time. So it's a mess. So he's basically telling, when you guys ask questions in the church, you have to keep it civil. You have to, if there's an agreement and you keep interrupting, then go and ask your husband at home, and then maybe he can describe it to you, or get the whoever's teaching, get the teacher to speak to you separately, right? So the idea is not to put you out. The idea is to get control of what is happening in the service. I'm telling you, these guys were a mess. For it is impossible for a woman to speak in church. And he's giving you an opinion right now. This is what he's doing you. In chapter 11, he says, right now, do the Passover this way until I come to you and give you further notice, right? And then, was it from you that the word of God, first went forth, or has it come to you only? And he's speaking this not only about the women, but also of the prophet. So he's giving you an introduction into the prophet. If anyone thinks he's a prophet or spiritual, let him recognize that the things that which I write to you are the Lord's commandments. If anyone does not recognize this, he is not recognized. Therefore, my brethren, desire earnestly to prophesy, and do not forbid the speaking in tongues. This is the part that people that argue this always leave out. He would never told you not to speak in tongues. He just told you, just do it indecently, right? Let all things be done properly and in order, in an orderly manner. Now, Corinthians was, if you look at the note, concerning the collection for the saints, and as I directed to the church of Galatians, so you are to do as well. So I believe Corinthians was written after he wrote the Galatians, 25 years after the tomb, after the Jerusalem, Act 15 Jerusalem Council. He wrote to them, to the Galatians, and he also wrote to the Corinth, because by the third missionary trip that he takes, he's already in Ephesus and in Corinth, right? So now he can address it directly, all the issues. So what some, I guess I would have to teach also, somebody wrote him a letter to tell them all the problems that they're having in the church in Corinth. So the letter to the Corinth is a response to all the issues that they told him. This is a problematic church. If I would teach this to a church, I would teach the whole book. To pick and choose, a little bit here and a little bit there, is you're taking the information out of context. Like, women shouldn't speak, right? Or you are the temple, So if you're the temple, we don't need a temple anymore. We don't need a high priest anymore, because the high priest is for the temple not made with hands, So that's not it's not a commandment, It's a parallelism, is a comparison, and I will make justice as the measuring line, true judgment as a way to judge. Don't judge, lest you be judged, and righteousness as the level. So you'll be able to look. You'll be able to know that it's right, because it will be a straight foundation. You'll see it very clearly. Okay. God bless. Shalom.